Hi, so today I want to talk about Black Mirror Season 4. Um, and I'm really excited to post this review because for once I'm like sort of on time because this season came out like probably, I don't know, over a week ago, so it's kind of old at this point, but it's not that old. I'm usually like way behind the times. So this is probably the first time I've posted anything that's sort of like timely on this channel. So I'm excited. Um, to start, let's talk about just real quick season 3. I haven't seen season 1 or season 2, but season 3 was okay. I like, science fiction about like the future and the future of technology and stuff that like makes you think about the future and the present and people and technology. But like I felt like season 3 was like absurdly pessimistic, and it was always about like the absolute worst possible scenario, and always about the pitfalls of technology, not the benefits. But episode 1 was Space Fleet, and it was actually kind of funny, which I didn't expect because these are always like really bleak, these episodes. So the funniness of this episode kind of helped me let my guard down, and I think helped me like this season a lot better just because it was so unexpected and, actually kind of funny. So that was a good thing about this episode, but I had some problems with it too. Like, for one, they tried too hard with like the swearing in this episode, and it's not that I mind swearing in my television shows. I actually like it, but if it's done well. And I feel like, I don't know if it was the way the actors delivered these lines or the way they were written or whatever, but it just seemed like the swearing in this episode, or in most of this season actually, kind of was just it felt forced, because it seemed like whoever was behind the show was thinking that they had to like put in a certain number of swears in order for this to seem like an adult show. So I didn't like that. But the much bigger problem I had with this episode was that Code is not alive, and it's pretty ridiculous that they could feel pain. These little, guys that were running around inside this program, like, and they existed like without him in there, when he wasn't running the game even, and that's possible. Like, Code does not feel pain. It can't. And it doesn't do anything that you don't tell it to do. It just does what you tell it to do. And so I don't know what purpose it served for him to program them to run in the background while he was at work and stuff. So I don't know why that happened. It was just like these, little programs were just alive. Yeah, it was presenting these little code bits like they were alive, like they just automatically took on a life of their own. Like it's just their natural state to be alive and it can't be helped. And that makes no sense. Yeah. And a lot of little things about this episode didn't make sense. Like, what happened to that guy getting burned up? I don't really care to find out, because there was too much torture in this episode and in this series in general, or like in this season. Because, I don't want to think about it. But, and then another little thing that was a problem was that he made these little programs with like the people's like full-on personalities and memories and everything from DNA, and that makes no sense. That's impossible. You can't, that's why twins are different. Like, just because the DNA is the same doesn't mean the same person's gonna result. They're gonna have different experiences and different memories, and you can't know someone's personality and memories and everything from their DNA. That just didn't make any sense. So, and then another little thing that didn't make sense was like this this girl who was like the main character and the captain at the end of the episode, her real life self was really easily blackmailed, which didn't make sense because her code self was like so strong-willed and, you know, and also like the pictures they used to blackmail her, we didn't see the actual pictures, but from what we did see, they were not bad at all. She looked like she was just like alone in her bed in like some nice lingerie, and they actually looked like pretty tasteful pictures from what I saw. They weren't bad. So I don't know. There were lots of little things like that that didn't make sense. All right, so let's move on to episode 2, which was called Archangel, and it was the one about the child brain implants. And the first thing I want to say is that, okay, this was my favorite episode, but it was so gross how this mom watched her kid have sex. Ew. And, like, that didn't shock her system immediately enough to, like, change her ways and figure out, like, something else, some other way to come at this, like, not use the system. Like, that's so gross. It's so gross. Why did she continue to use the tablet after that? I mean, I kind of understand that she was, like, in a panic in that particular moment, and so she cheated and used the tablet that she should have thrown away, but she didn't. And so I understand, like, the temptation to use it at that point. But at that point, she should have thrown it away. And I don't know, like, she should have changed at that point because it's just so gross. But she didn't. And I think this episode was about how not teaching your child in their formative years about what being good is, and instead just trying to control them, that's really damaging to them. Because, like, this mom had this kid who she controlled to a degree that, like, in her formative years is not possible for people today, but, you know, she had, like, this futuristic system installed in her brain that allowed her to even control what her child saw with her own 2 eyes, and she put this filter on her eyes so that she couldn't see anything that was, like, bad, basically, or upsetting. And so what ended up happening is that she wasted all this time that she had with the child, where she was, like, there with her child physically most of the time, and she could have used that time to, you know, experience things with her child and explain to her child, like, this is good and this is bad and this is dangerous and you shouldn't be afraid of this, even if it's scary. So she wasted those formative years that she could have used to teach her child, and then when her child got a little bit older, and the mother took the filter off the child's eyes, then she wasn't there with her child to explain all these things that she was basically experiencing for the first time. So she didn't, you know, and so I thought it was really well done, the way that the mom, when she said, be good, it happened a couple times. She said, be good to her child when her child was leaving for school, and the words rang so hollow, you know, because the child had, like, no reaction to that, and I think just the way the line was delivered and the way it was shot, the words were so empty and hollow, because the kid didn't know what good was. The kid didn't know what good or bad was. So I thought that was really well done, the way that it came off when the mom said, be good. And I also think that that's why, by the way, because her mom didn't teach her about what being good or being bad was. She wasn't there for the child in her formative years. And I also think that's why the child fell in love with that other kid, because he kind of, like, took on a parenting role and taught her all these adult things that her mom didn't teach her about. So he kind of, like, filled that hole in her life, and he did it in a way that obviously wasn't ideal at all, because he kind of, like, threw it all at her in a really overwhelming way and didn't actually teach her about morally what was good and bad. he just showed her these things. And so that's the other thing that this episode was about. It was about moral responsibility. There was even a line about that, and I didn't quite catch it, but I think it was moral responsibility calls for free will. And so that's kind of what this, so like this kid was, she didn't have any free will as a child. She couldn't even like control what she saw with her own eyes. Her mom controlled that. So she didn't learn any moral responsibility, and then when she did have free will, she didn't know right from wrong. And I thought it was a really interesting twist at the end that it backfired. This, you know, the mom like put in the system to the child, and it backfired in the end because of the filter. Because of the filter, the kid was able to attack her mother to a degree that she probably wouldn't have otherwise, because she was like, you know, she was using the tablet to like really like attack and beat her mom, and she couldn't actually see what she was doing, what was happening, because of the filter. So she like really went at it, and then as soon as the filter went off and she saw like the blood and like the damage she had done to her mom's face, she immediately stopped. So she probably wouldn't even have gone that far if the filter hadn't, you know, been on. So that was interesting. And an interesting point about that is that people can do worse things if they don't directly like see it happening. They are capable of doing much worse things, because a lot of people are capable of torturing and murdering animals if they don't actually have to see it being done, right? Like, you know, as a vegan, I know this is true of humans, so that was also an interesting little thing there. And this episode was directed by Jodie Foster, so that's kind of cool. I like Jodie Foster. And I've never, like, I don't know anything about her really, except that I think she's like a Scorpio, and she was, I've seen like some things that she acted in. I don't know if I probably have seen some things that she directed too, but I don't know what. Anyway, moving on, episode 3 was the Memory Machine episode. I don't remember what it's called, but the technology didn't come into the episode until fairly late, so I was like, is this episode even going to be about like the future of technology? It kind of just seems like it's about this woman on a killing spree. And then I was like, so is it going to say anything about technology? And it didn't really end up saying anything about technology. It was just kind of about like the possible future of law enforcement. I mean, and it seemed like a really cool profession, like this job that this woman had. She wasn't like a police investigator or anything. She was just like an insurance investigator, and she, I just thought it was really neat how she had to find different little ways to jog people's memories, like different little psychological things, like the smells and the sounds. You know, that was neat. But still, I mean, the fact that this particular piece of technology ended up in the wrong hands is not so much about the downside of technology, since law enforcement and like door-to-door people have always stumbled upon bad guys without being prepared for it, and bad guys have always kind of co-opted police tools. So I feel like so I thought it was really funny that like at the end they had these kids singing a song, and they were dressed up as like the mob, because that's what this episode made me think of, is the mob, because they kind of you know, co-opted police tools and resources and stuff, and you know, like they use guns and they pay off bad cops and stuff like that. So I didn't feel like this episode was about the future of law enforcement. I feel like that's how law enforcement has always kind of been. It was about the future technology of law enforcement, but it wasn't so much about the downside of any particular piece of technology, I feel like. And I thought it would be, like, I thought it was, there was a certain point where I thought it was going to make a point about memory, and I thought it would have been cooler if this murderer, if her emotions had drastically changed the memory, and I thought maybe it was going to use that. I thought that was going to happen. so that the memory machine didn't actually pick up on what actually happened. And then I thought, I don't know what the point of that would have been, but I thought it could have made some sort of interesting point about memory, but it didn't. So she tried, though. She kind of tried to change her memories, or color her memories so that the machine wouldn't pick up on it, and she failed. So I don't know, but I did like how they used the animal to see its memories, because animals have memories too. Okay, and this is something that TV shows should be showing people. Animals have memories and thoughts and feelings, and you shouldn't kill and murder and torture and eat them. Okay? So I did appreciate that. And then episode 4 was Hang the DJ. I was a little bit lost on this one. I don't know if it was for or against serial dating and sexual partners, serial sexual partners, because at first it seemed like it was, because they met who they wanted to be with forever on their first date. And then they were kind of questioning the whole point of going through all these other partners. But then at the end, it was kind of the end was kind of really positive about the system and how it works 98% of the time. So it might have been for the serial dating and serial sexual partners, which I personally think is really stupid, because the idea that you have to date lots of people to find out what you want. Do people not know anything about themselves? Do they not know anything about what they want? If you love animals and you hate racism, and someone asks you, so do you want to be with someone who also loves animals and hates racism? And you're like, I don't know, I have to date around to find out. That's so stupid. It doesn't make any sense. I feel like people who need to date around to find out what they want in a partner don't know anything about themselves or don't have personalities. They should know basically what they want. But I did like about this episode how I wondered if anyone had jobs outside of these dating things, or if they had experience before they started dating, and stuff like that. And then I was like, well, this episode is just sloppy because I'm thinking about these things and there's no answer to them. But it turned out, no, the answer was they didn't have jobs or experiences before this because they were just computer simulations. So I thought that was neat. So I'm guessing they probably, I don't know, I would guess that they took 2 real people and made little simulation copies of them. And, they took 2 real people who were together in real life and in love in real life and made simulations of them and ran them through the program to see if they would end up in the program the way that they ended up together in real life. And 98% of the time it worked. That's what I'm guessing. Anyway. By the way, I would like to point out that it was actually disgusting. I don't know, the way that the serial sex was presented, it was really gross. None of the sex was sexy, and I don't know if that was on purpose, but it makes sense. Anyway, now on to episode 5, Metalhead, which is basically they're walking robots. They're walking robots. Yeah, it's basically The Walking Dead with robots, and there's not a lot to say about it. I don't know, I guess the twist was that they were after a teddy bear, which is sweet, but the episode started with these people talking about pigs, and it just automatically made me think about how people eat pigs, and then I spent the whole episode thinking that humanity deserves to die, so it wasn't an effective episode for me at all. Usually I can, kind of get into, a survival episode or show for a little bit, but, this one I was, not into it at all. I was, from the start I was kind of rooting against this person, this human, and all humans to just die. Anyway, episode 6 it was called Black Museum, and it was about Black Museum, this museum full of all the artifacts from all the episodes. So we learn here that all these stories are in the same universe, which is surprising to me because I thought they were all in separate like, futuristic universes, which I think would have made more sense, because if you put them all in the same universe, then it just stops making sense, because there are technologies here that would help there, and so on and back and forth, right? So it just didn't really make any sense. Like, yeah, I feel like they just did this to make it like a cool little thing that you could be like, oh, they're all in the same place. And I feel like that kind of made it not make sense. But I had a lot of problems with this episode. They went way overboard with the torture. And the thing is, like, usually when people portray torture in entertainment, it's the same as sexual assault, which I made a video on, within the framework of, like, Gerald's Game a while back, and I talked about how people who portray sexual assault in entertainment usually just, it's not a serious thing to them, and that's usually true with torture too. It's that people who portray this in entertainment, it's not a serious thing to them, and they don't understand how damaging it really is to people. So usually I think they don't get it, but in this case, I'm not sure. I think the vibe I was getting was that it's a real fear of whoever's running this show. Hell. Because these characters, these, people in the show who become, like, code and brainwaves and stuff, they are able to experience pain that never ends, like, to a degree that they couldn't if they were alive, because they would die. That's kind of like a description of hell, I feel like, is, you can't die, so you could just suffer forever. And the existence of hell is, like, not something I want to get into a debate on, but I think that's the vibe I'm getting, is that, like, whoever's behind the show has, like, a real fear of, like, that. So it was a serious thing to them. It's just that the main thing about this is that it's really annoying that they don't get the science behind it. You need a body to feel pain. You need specialized pain receptors called nociceptors, and brain matter. And absence of either eliminates pain, which is why brain surgery is possible, because the brain doesn't have any pain receptors. So even though it might be, like, firing its, synapses and blah blah blah, it can't feel pain because it doesn't have any pain receptors. And that's why, they can operate on you, and you might still be awake while they're operating on you, on your brain, because you can't feel that, because there is no pain receptors. You might still be able to sense things, like, you can hear things and see things, and so computers and whatever might be able to sense and respond to some stimuli, but not pain. That's just impossible. And I let this go a little with episode 1 because it was a comedy, but it's clear that whoever is behind this show thinks that computers and teddy bears can feel pain. And no, they can't. No. So, and there were lots of little things with this episode too that didn't make sense, and I did kind of like the anti-sadism and commentary on racial tensions, but, so many things didn't make sense. That husband who put his wife in a teddy bear was such a jerk, and I thought it was really ridiculous how... I just thought it was really silly and didn't make any sense how he and his wife didn't seem to know each other. She didn't seem to know that he didn't wash his hands after he used the bathroom, and, stuff like that. Living together, you would know these things, so it just kind of seemed really kind of overblown, for the point, exaggerated to an unrealistic degree how uncomfortable they would be together. And how could the museum owner keep the teddy bear if it was illegal? Wouldn't they put her in, a better, stuffed animal or something? That didn't make any sense. Why wouldn't they also just like upload her to like the cloud like they do with old people? I don't know. And how did the ACLU let the owner get away with all the other stuff he did if they were mad about the teddy bear? That didn't make sense. So lots of little things didn't make sense, and this was my least favorite episode. But overall, this show, it's okay, but I would say it's absurdly pessimistic, and overall, main complaint is the ability of robots and computers and other non-living, non-flesh-bound things to feel physical pain. That's not how it works. It's not a scientific idea at all. It's really frustrating for me as a vegan because people are already so uneducated about this subject that they think that plants feel pain. And I don't need a science fiction TV show further muddying the waters. No one needs that. Stop. I think whoever's behind this show believes that you cease to exist after death, and that's for the best because otherwise you could be made to suffer. There's a clear thread of that kind of thinking running throughout the series. So, classic fearful atheist syndrome. rebelling against the idea of God and the afterlife, but at the behest of your own anxieties, which atheism does nothing to relieve. I just made all that up. I don't know. That's just the vibe I get from this show. So if you agree with that, if you also got that vibe, comment below. And if you didn't, comment below. And that's it. Thanks for watching.